Today, we talk about the power of stress. One interesting word, an interesting phrase, an interesting statement that we are going to open the can of worms to today. The power of stress. We are cracking open the conversation today and diving into multiple layers of stress. Now, the main thing I want to dive into today when we go here is I want to talk about that post-traumatic stress, that PTSD. I've really been diving in to PTSD over the last few years and how it kind of sits within inside the self, how it kind of affects the chakras, how it infers on your mental health and well-being, what it does cognitively, what it does emotionally, mentally, inside the psyche, how your brain processes past trauma, and how it hurts you physically. It comes to mind the ideology of when you go through heartbreak and your heart actually hurts. Some people who have a broken heart because they broke up with a boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, discovered someone cheating, lost a friendship or something like that, that could actually result in true painful heartbreak. Literally fragmented heart in relation to the moleculars within your heart, those blood vessels, those veins, the rate of which it's pumping. Lots of little things can be affected just by the stress of it all, right? So that's worth noting today. Let's dive into PTSD first and then see where we go from there. Because what I think is really worth noting and what's been a really beautiful revelation for me in 2025 is the awakening of how real PTSD can be. Now, we know PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, really stems from or can be best defined by the army, soldier, military ideology, being on the battlefield, being at war, a real traumatic event, bombs exploding, drones, helicopters shooting, murders, everywhere you look, disaster, you're in the trenches, oh my God, this is trauma. You leave the battlefield, you come home, you try to recover, but suddenly there's a helicopter in the sky, someone's knocked into you with the broom or mop they were using, and suddenly you're back in the battlefield, and that memory of trauma now becomes the vision in the now moment, and you've blurred lines between two different periods of space and time, and you're freaking the fuck out because basically you're psychologically warping out over within a paradigm of duality. Yeah? Consciously you're traveling through space and time and you're glitching out because one reality is overrunning in another reality and you're seeing it through different stimuli. Different neural networks are lit up in response to two of the same events. And as a result, you fucked in the head. We can do that, right? We can break character and be professional and then also say you fucked in the head for a minute or two. And I say that with the utmost respect, actually. Let's pull it back. Because I say that in regards to some of the experiences I've had, which I'll use as an example as we travel here. But I'll also link it to things I've seen online, shorts and clips on YouTube where a guy in the army is being held tightly by a professional who's experienced with soldiers going through this, and he's screaming and he's crying and he's going insane and he's trying to attack, but he's freaking out deeply because he's gone. He's actually psychologically no longer in this dimension and in this period of space and time. He's back over there where the war was thick and the mind was heavy, and he can't segue between the two. He's lost all reality in the now moment. He's living in the past. And his whole mental, mind, body and soul is actually left the building and gone back to that period of space and time. Yeah, he's been sucked, he's been dragged through the portal, wormhole, warped his way back over to another period of space and time, and now he is fucked in the head. Yeah? Period. We're gonna speak on it in a really simple term, or simple way, so others can learn from this shit, because it's tense. So we swear today, like we do most days, but we make excuses for that nonetheless. So I say that because that's the extremities of the situation. That's war, that's a soldier, that's understandable. But there are other things that happen in your life that are traumatic. Yeah? Relationship breakup. Sudden ending to a relationship can trigger that. Sudden homelessness can trigger that. Sudden deaths can trigger that. Different forms of abuse and control, and even the revelation after the fact that you've been abused as well, interestingly enough. You've been financially abused, psychologically abused, manipulated, lied to, taken advantage of, something bad has happened, but you didn't really see it whilst you were in it. You've left it and you're healing, and it's starting to dawn on you that all of these things that were happening were because of this or that person. Really, the revelation after the fact is what we're talking about here. And it could be as simple as someone cheating on you for years, but you didn't know, but then now you've pulled away and you've started to assess everything. You could see it with clearer eyes, and you realise, oh my God, that's what they were doing to me all that time. I didn't know. And that could trigger, I wanted to say psychosis, because we do want to talk a little bit more over here actually about psychosis and different layers of mental health, because why that's important is because firstly we want to break those paradigms of confusion, because we're starting to look at the psyche through the example I've just given with the PTSD and the soldier, which is that space-time, which is that warp, which is that wormhole, which is that quantum mechanics of psychosis and the mind and consciousness. We want to dive into dimensions of consciousness in a really, really scientific way, which I haven't been able to do in my career up until more recently, because everything I was producing or discussing was trapped in a paradigm of pseudoscience and conspiracy. And as we keep stepping forward, in flux, I was going to say forcibly so, because I'm not actually stepping forward with a specific trajectory anymore in life. Like, I'm not ploughing forward, left, right, left, right, left. I'm not on that kind of mission anymore. I feel the days of that for me are gone, but I am allowing myself to be in flux with the universe. Yeah, the Fibonacci is indeed spinning around my circumference, and I'm allowing myself to move with fluidity, ebb and flow between those polarities, but within that tide. Yeah, I am allowing myself to be that wave. Yeah, theoretically and practically, embracing the collapse and the rise. Yeah. We're going to have more of these kind of conversations and start cracking open ideologies that were so entrenched in that's bullshit, that's pseudo, that's conspiracy, that's got no legs, you're a whack job, you're a leftist, that's ungrounded, right? There's no scientific proof for this, blah, 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 blah. That's where we're at today. So it's nice to break the mold and dive into conversations that really challenge the status quo of what is and isn't healthy mentally, emotionally, spiritually. So let's dive in a little bit more with that ideology of the brain processing information, and the ideology that that is psychotic or ill mental health. We're going to pin that ill mental health in today's conversation in line with stress and trauma and anxiety and panic, because I'm a clairvoyant. And what started my research back in 2018, formally, but before that, long before that, maybe 2016, a little bit before that maybe, what really started this was I see. And I know I see. I've been given repeated confirmations that what I'm seeing is genuine. I'm starting to explore the spiritual realms more and what clairvoyance really is. So as a result of that, I have to question the clinical practices and processes that are in place that are inclined to say that what I'm experiencing is false, is null, is lies, disingenuous, fake, impossible. I must be strong enough to move that ideology to the side and keep looking for the truth here. Because there's a lot going on in the psyche, there's a lot going on in the mind. And I experience a lot of different things with my clear senses. We're going to just focus on clairvoyance today because the visions are powerful enough for us to use as an example and overlap that with psychosis, hallucination, schizophrenia, different mental health conditions. Now, why this is important today, because to look at stress, to understand stress, to overcome trauma, you have to be willing to understand what you're receiving in the mind's eye, what you're envisioning, what your thoughts are telling you. We talk about this at Hermitology, and we'll develop some kind of syllabus, some seminars, some deeper rooted conversations about all of this, because the truth is, the veil is thinning and the world is changing. And it's time we started to choose accuracy, innovation, awakening. We must desire to know more. We must desire to understand. Now, when I speak on this, I meet resistance in my mind. So you're going to hear me go back and forth today a little bit in the mind, because as I'm speaking on this, I challenge myself and I go, hold on. On that same note, we've had this event go on many times before. I frequently speak about the Salem witch trials. In many places around the world, witchcraft, spirituality, spell casting, it's a crime. In Africa, yeah? Different parts of the UAE. Loads of places around the world are very much against witchcraft, and it's a legal thing. It used to be in the West as well, in the United Kingdom also. So if that is the case, and we have bills and acts and laws against what would be seen as clairvoyance today, then how can it really be conspiracy or pseudoscience when it's established in certified law and bills and acts? And it raises very interesting questions about society today. And I say that because evolution is a real thing. And as I study and embrace the human in all of its glory across space and time that we can account for, we go, hold on, okay. Clairvoyance is here. A range of different mental illnesses are also here. Stress and post-traumatic stress are here. Anxiety and depression are here. Let's look at that. Because the power of stress creates a trigger, right? It fires off this cannon of reactors. I want to talk about the nervous system, fight and flight, but I also want to talk about neural networks, and then I also want to talk about chakras. So it's looking at a plethora of different functions, mind, body and soul, that are responding to a layer of stress. I've just lost my wallet, I've just lost my keys, I've just been in a car crash, right? Stress. I've just broken up with my partner, stress. My house just burnt down. Stress. I hate this job. Stress. I feel bullied and attacked. Stress. This person's crying again. Stress. My cat is whining again and I don't know what to do about it. Stress. Time of the month. Stress. Workload. Stress. Just saying the word stress is stressful enough for me, right? Clearly, we're trying to induce stress today through this audio because now I'm feeling more stress as I say stress in that voice of stress. So let's reduce that and pull that back and try to not inflict such trauma on the self today. But let's identify that it is a real thing. And the main thing I want to pin, and I'm trying to circle round this conversation so we can ground it in something substantial, but it's that vision, isn't it? It's that vision. And I don't want to limit sound and voice. All the clear senses are relevant here, so you can go and look at the PDF in the description, because hearing something that doesn't exist, having negative thoughts in the mind, programming self to be more positive instead of I hate my life, I hate my job, I hate who I am. Those lower vibrational thoughts, they really can tear away at your sense of self and your psyche and make you feel really shit about who you are. The main reason I went on a spiritual journey back in 2016 and really started diving into chakras and spiritual awakening was because my self-talk was disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. And my energy, the person I was, the way that I behaved, it was just negative. It was a real awareness of me for the first time that I was conscious enough of the fact that I was negative and hateful towards myself. I spoke about myself in a really negative context. Hate my life, I hate my job, what's the point of this? This is shit. It was just a negative context of conversation and internal dialogue. And the more I started to acknowledge that, I thought, my goodness, I'm going to need to do something about that now. I've noticed it. And it took me about 4 years, I would say, the best part of 4.5 years, to really start establishing a healthier sense of self, a healthier psyche. And during that window of time, I wasn't shy or intimidated to speak about that transition and change that I was going through. And actually, if you've grown up in an environment or around family and friends where the culture is to have that kind of conversation with self, or no one was conscious enough to even start to acknowledge how we spoke to self, affirmations weren't a thing, and knocking each other down in the way in which we talk to each other, talking to each other like you're shit, is just a standard way of talking, and there's not enough consideration or positive dialogue to kind of, what's the word? Lift up, inspire, motivate. Then you don't really know what you're exposed to. You don't really know what the norm is, or the status quo is, or just the typical way of functioning in your community or social group, friend group, family group is, until you're out of it. Until you step out of that working environment, that job, the culture you have in the staff room or with your colleagues at that job versus that other job, it's culture. The work environment, the work culture. If you work on a construction site, the banter and the terminology and the way that you talk is going to be different if you work in the C-suite of a big tech corporation. You're a barista, you're a dustbin man, different culture, yeah? Your comfort zone. You work with recycling trash all week and driving a garbage truck. Then the way in which you think about trash and rubbish and recycling is going to be different to the barista opening all these packets of plastic and cardboard, and the protocols and policies that are in place to make sure that company is eco-friendly and on a path to net zero, it's going to be very different sometimes to a company that is actually more of a civil service job, government, actually in the field doing the recycling and managing all of this kind of stuff on a day-to-day basis. That's just an example. But you've got to understand the context of difference. So what we want to pin today, in line with this stress, is the evolution of autonomy, of selfhood and identity. So we want to hone in on Erik Erikson, first and foremost, the king of the psychosocial stages of development, where he really goes through the steps that we all go through as human, right? And the first one is that's autonomy. Well, the second one's autonomy and shame. The first one is trust and mistrust. We always use these as a really grounding concept for how we all develop from birth. So I often use trust and mistrust, so we're going to skip past that, and we're going to go straight to shame and autonomy, because this is a key signifier for stress for me. If you, on a spectrum, because we're throwing in the spectrum of monotropism, the philosophy of the school of hermitology that we're developing, right? On the spectrum, we've got shame on the left, we've got autonomy on the right. I like that for the far left and the far right if we want to hone in on political constructs to attach that together, okay? So we're looking at as shame as the left. Shame, shame, shame. A lot of things on the left are wrapped around ego to a certain degree, ridding ourselves of that shame, that awkwardness. I don't want to be ashamed of self. Yeah? So I have to do this to be approved of by my community. I want to be seen as somebody who is loving and caring and a true humanitarian. The left ideology is about I don't even want to be too grounding in that approach, but we're going to find an example here, because I'm thinking about the different leftist ideologies that could be seen as a negative. So I hate this example because it gives credence to stuff I wouldn't really want to give credence to, but let's see where we go with it, because in my head I'm getting the obvious left, which is the LGBTQ, which is the anti-Semitic, which is the anti-racist, which is the DEI advocacy. It's all of the approaches that at this time leading figures like Elon Musk would advocate for as a negative and as part of the woke mind virus. That's the spiritual community. That's the independent advocate who doesn't want to follow the status quo of humanity. Okay? That's one element there. That's a sense of self. That's someone establishing their selfhood and identity within a paradigm of a lighter way of living. Yeah? Supposedly this is the more ethereal, honest, integritous way to exist. Yeah? That also relates to being more deprived economically, having less money, potentially doing more charity, or just being an underprivileged group and screaming about that. Yeah? On the right, and this is me summing it up. Not all of this is personal opinion. Yeah, we're using research, we're using data, we're using statistics, we're using knowledge. I may not be screaming them at you, but we do have more than enough systematic reviews and meta-analysis out there that we've seen that's swirling around in our synapses, just going, yeah, we receive that this narrative is largely skewed to the left of existence. Yeah. So we do the same on the right. And what do we have in polarity to that shame? It's that autonomy. It's that autonomy. Now, this is where it gets controversial here, because we just ran all the way from the left with that shame and that DEI, right? And that underprivileged group over there and that oppressed systematic narrative. Fly all the way over to the far right. What have we got? White supremacy, right? Who knew we were going here? Interesting when we let the brain do its thing without us involved. Because then we've also got what? The capitalist. We've also got the leading figures of the world. We've got globalists. We've got big tech. Elon Musk already screaming woke mind virus no, and he's already skewed over here to what many would refer to as a massive advocate for white rights. I didn't want to say white supremacy because there's a lot to unpack in that. and I wouldn't want to offend the boss of the planet at this time. But let's pin that there, because with the events going on in Africa, South Africa to be exact, with the absolute advocacy from black people in Africa outrightly screaming, kill whites, with placards and all sorts, yeah? And actually killing whites at that, it's really, really, really clear that there is this divide in this culture and this shift from autonomy too. Because in that same note where we pin the black community in South Africa that is now incredibly publicly, outrightly screaming anti-white, destroy the white narrative, that's now become an autonomous response to what would have previously appeared to be a demographic on the left side of the scale. So what's interesting now is we're seeing polarity flip. We're seeing paradigm shift. And this is going to bring us back to stress in a really important way, and post-traumatic stress as well. Because now what we can really start to see forming culturally is the stressor of, firstly, the white man, which has got to be the narrative of 2024 for me. But it's interesting because it's taking more form and becoming more solidified in 2025. And that is the narrative of that white man oppression. That's what's really coming forward, interestingly, as a narrative. Stay with me. What the fuck is she talking about? Are you insane? Did you hear yourself? The white man oppression. How on earth could you say such a ridiculous thing? Listen, it's interesting. We are at a really juicy, pivotal time. Period. A pivotal period of space and time. Because, and go and speak to Elon Musk. Go and look at Elon Musk's timeline. He will, he's the richest man on the planet, and he will too claim oppression of his kind at this time. And it's so interesting, it's fascinating, like, because I'm in my Darwin era, okay, and I love it here. It's amazing. And like, I guess I thought it was going to be controversial and everyone was going to be up in arms over what I had to say, but it's research, and it's the depths of study, and it's human development, and someone has to do it. Many of us have to start diving into these conversations and doing it in ways that are fearless and free. And this was a radical approach when I suggested this back in 21 for my doctorate. It was feared. But it makes so much more sense now, you know, because time is fluid and we are going to go in this direction nonetheless. I am a futurist, so we cannot deny the truth. So let's get into this conversation and just pin it here, and feel free to dive into the comments, no matter how old this is, no matter when you see this, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years from now, this conversation is still going to be relevant. Give me an update in the comments when you finally do come across this. Where are we now? How has this evolved? Because we can show that this is causal looping, right? So we're going to pin that post-traumatic stress. Remember, we came for the power of stress today. So I'm going to give you do you know what a stress test is? Yeah? Financial institutions, all across banking, all across most departments in life, we do stress tests. Yeah? Because we want to really establish how much stress can one take. This is coming off the back of me having a really intensive week of yoga and Pilates and strength training as well. And well, let's pin that, because the principles sometimes in Pilates and yoga and some sessions is to fatigue the body. Applying stress to the muscles, really working my body harder than usual, because what does that do? That really forces the muscles to grow, strengthen, break, repair, recover, and be stronger and more resilient for another cycle of fatigue and physical abuse, right? How does the empath become born? They go through abuse. How does the spiritual choose to become awakened? They are so stressed by their reality they must change it. How does one get a promotion? They stress out enough and desire for more. How does one complete their studies and get a first, or a master's, or graduate? They stress out about tests and literature and assignments and deadlines. Stress is important. Stress is highly influential in change. Stress is also post-traumatic. If you are incredibly wise, then it could be pre-traumatic. I haven't done any research on pre-traumatic stress. Is that a thing? Is that something we should be diving into? Let's have a quick look while we're here. Pre-traumatic stress, just to be sure, because it must be a thing, but I wouldn't know in what context it really is existing. It refers to a mental health condition characterized by anxiety and distress stemming from the anticipation of a traumatic event. I've got to go to a funeral. I have a test in the morning. Yeah? I have to have a sit-down talk with my partner. I have to talk with a colleague. I have to fire somebody. That's pre-traumatic stress, okay? Yeah. There's a lot of different ways that you are stressed and anxious and triggered before an event. And that's simply it, isn't it? Good to note that. So let's dive into the summary of this and how we are linking this in. Because guess where we're going for today's discussion of stress? What a beautiful world we live in when the mind just boggles and finds itself. Because now we're going to speak about Nelson Mandela and the apartheid and racism. Now, why this is significant for me and hermitology today is because for all of my career and upbringing, black and white has always been a conversation. And I've always been one of those people growing up that I see colour. Like, you know, where it's like there's a real divide in culture and community where some people are like, I don't see colour, and other people are like, I do see your colour, and some people are like, I don't want you to see my colour, and other people are like, no, I want you to see my colour, right? I'm brown, I'm black, I'm this, I'm that. I want you to know my heritage. I want you to know my ethnicity. I want you to know my race. Yeah? Like people are, that's what we're seeing as the leftist ideology or the woke mind virus ideology, really rooted in know me, know my gender, even if it is different. Know my gender, even if it is forbidden in law. Know my skin colour, know my race, know my preferences. Hear my cry, hear my breakaway from the status quo. I refuse to be the psyop. I am a playable character in this game, right? That's the leftist ideology, and so removed from the far right ideology because it is more of an ideology on the right of we are who we are. We are classically conditioned to be this way, and we must continue to be that classical condition because the classical condition works. We see it in our bank balance. We see it in our status, our wealth, yeah? Our literature, our text, our preferences, our lineage. We are high and mighty. We are well established. We have a clear system in place. The systemization on the right is very different to the systemization on the left. Now, as a clairvoyant, the vision I can give you from that is when I look at the systems on the right, we're looking at beautiful mappings, beautiful hierarchy with tiered, layered pyramids and blocks to define each role and each person. A tree of a family tree style construct, or a business hierarchical structure that quite frequently is used in business to map out the staffing structure, which is more of a upstanding. Not quite a 3D structure, but it could be, but more of a 2.5D. We've never discussed molecular dimensions over here yet, so we're going to have to do that at some point as well. But in my vision, it's 2.5 on the spectrum of growth. Whereas over here, we're looking at more of a 2D shape, anywhere from a 1.5 to a 2-dimensional shape here. It's flat. It's just got a few links and nodes, right? a simple circle and a line, the linear to the dot, and it's just that over there on the left. And there is no great interconnected nature of this body of mass. It is not formed to the point where it can replicate and evolve and grow. So we're looking at helix DNA on the right, and we're looking at a tiny blood cell on the left. Yeah? And it's just floating there. The pieces on the left are just floating there, where the pieces on the right are actually forming a strong molecular structure. Yeah? And that's where we look at the greatest divides on this planet. And that's before we decide to pull away from the developmental, sociological scope of humanity and start diving into war and terrorism and true hate and awful venomous stuff that stems from these ideologies. Because the further we move along this line of far left and far right brings us into these quite forbidden territories of conversation, which are overwhelming and intimidating and dangerous in certain instances. Because there is a rise in I want to say a rise, but I also want to not lie to myself about a rise. Because we said we were going to speak about Nelson Mandela, didn't we? We didn't really get there because there's a lot of shit in the way, isn't there? Because there's been years and years and years of racism and apartheid and real separate ideologies of black and white and how white should be treated and how black should be treated and who is the leading race and who isn't. Hard conversations to have today, you know? But worth having at a time like this. Because what we're looking at, in my opinion, is a causal loop. For Africa, South Africa, to be going through what they're going through now is very, very telling of society and of evolution and this epoch. The way that life just cycles around and round again. And it picks up heat, it picks up momentum. We can talk about Malcolm X and Martin Luther King and the things that they fought for. And then we can fly right back to Black Lives Matter and the key moments of that movement and everything that happened then. Life just is on repeat again and again. And everyone gets hurt and in their feelings and wants to protect their kind and chooses to sit on the spectrum and fight for their rights. And that's life. It's always going to be that way. But it does take individuals to step out of that that space of judgment and being selective. Because this is where my heart is. I wish we had more time to go here. I don't know how we break this down any further and how we bring this home to stress. So we're going to try and wind it down now, right? But if you choose the left or the right, yeah, you provide no real leverage or range for you to evolve. Yeah? How can you become more of self? And this is it. This is the point that we're going to pin. And we're probably going to turn this into some kind of series later on. But for me, life has long been a linear spectrum from the left to the right and the right to the left. That's it. Mainly it goes left to right and stops. In this lifetime, it's now bouncing back from the left to the right to the right to the left. So at least the spectrum has equal measure of give and take. In regards to also bite back, yeah? Because that means now the left are prepared to fight the right and the right are prepared to fight the left. And now there is equal leverage between the two arguments, yeah? But within that same breath, when I think of the greats like Darwin and all of the greats that exist out there, Einstein, gravity, the way in which we're preparing to leave Earth now and go out beyond the Kármán line more frequently and set up shop over on Mars. Create more sustainable options for us to explore the moon. We're all going up. I believe in going up, yeah? I also understand the existence of going down too. I understand top-down, bottom-up philosophy a lot more than I do left and right. And I think we're at a time in reality, yet who am I to make such a claim, for time is but a mere illusion. But I feel like it's at least time for me and hermitology and everything we strive for to no longer run towards a quantile to the left or right, but choose to establish much stronger structures in regards to top down and bottom up. I want to say sustainability, because when I'm talking top down and bottom up, I really, really, really want to talk about actualization in the field across planet Earth. Sorry, up and out of planet Earth. Because, wow, in my head now I'm getting, so the biggest stress test of Earth is now beginning because we are starting to challenge the blocksphere, the status quo, the ascension, the trackage, the travel, the speed and the force of that left and right, of that linear perspective. And if we start pushing for top down, bottom up stressors, and we start testing the stress responses for top down and bottom up in correlation to the left and right, we're looking at some massive societal shifts. This is overwhelming. This screams globalization. This also screams Ritz's psychological paradigm in practice, yeah? Which is what we should be aiming for in this lifetime, understanding how things are already practiced. And why this is important, because everything I'm suggesting isn't something new. It's already being done. It's just not being spoken about in easy, interpretable terms. Plain English. It's not being understood. It's not being used. It's not, the consciousness that this is how the world is running isn't quite there yet. So we're going to push for that. And we're going to push for better intelligence and respect for that original sight, that original vision, that original piece of intelligence that came from your mind. Yeah? I love consciousness. And I love evolution so much. And I'm grateful that I chose my consciousness and my evolution over believing in something that didn't quite sit right with me. And I also like to think that I also chose to not be a negative actor or bad actor, bad gamer, a negative person in the field that is trying to rob the left of their riches and the right of their riches. I understand what the right fight for, and I understand what the left fight for. Do I have personal opinions about both of them and how skewed their perspectives are at times? Yeah. Am I sitting in a position that I think makes me better than the other? No, for I have my own concerns and insecurities. I would rather just sit here and understand what you're saying. Do you get, like, this is how I look at it. This is the best example I can give on the way out. I would rather put myself in the position to be the dial, the pin in the compass that is ticking back and forth to truly understand how this stress is inferring on me. I'm highly empathic, I'm highly sensitive, HSP, highly sensitive person. I am on the spectrum, right? Autistically speaking, monotropically speaking. I study all of this stuff. I am trying to find myself, which is a lifelong journey. I know me, I am found. But evolution is ongoing, so there's more of me to come, I like to think, right? And I'm not intimidated to say that. And I understand that on the right, white people have a bee in their bonnet about dying out and not being a white majority and having spaces that are less than white dominated. That is a genuine fear for the far right and a lot of white activism that has been there but is now on the rise even more so in a very different epoch, also connected to technology, and this is filtering through into politics more than ever before. Now, I haven't got a lot of white history to pull on for this. America is the main place where white supremacy in these kind of stories would represent, but in other areas of the world, UK also, this is becoming a dominant conversation. Once again, we can go back to periods of time past stressors on Earth where racism and white and black divide was just as high, but once again these are post and pre-traumatic stressful events that are influencing the sociological paradigms here on Earth, right? Because on the far left, and we use black and white as an example all the time over here because it's what we do, right? The conversation has to be had, and I'll rather use the yin and the yang, the left and the right, the most obvious quantile of difference that's creating pandemonium at windows of time across the planet to try and leverage and broker some kind of peace or consciousness or awakening. No, I am no great advocate for anything other than, can we try and make sense of this and have a real conversation without even being scared to say white people or black people? Oh, because everyone shits the bed and needs to be politically correct 24/7. Fuck all that. Let's try and get clear in our heads here. Yeah? Because real bad things are happening. And actually, the rate of fucking bullshit picking up is incredibly high. So I would like us all to kind of speed up, and actually anyone out there who's woke enough to not want to be a hater towards the left or the right, but ground some kind of leverage or understanding where we can prevent more deaths and more suicides and more ill will on this planet and reduce the death toll, well, we'll take that. We'll take that, right? Because there's more and more black people that are more and more irritated and feel more and more oppressed in the situations that are in. And the statistics for the black people over here in relation to education, and specifically in America, and the statistics of which how many black minorities or black people and minority groups are failing in education in America, but also in the UK, is devastating. Yeah? Also, being a mixed person as well, I've grown up with really understanding the difference and seeing the divide and understanding the conversations that are being had either side of the divide, right? White family, black family, this being said, that being said, these views, that view. It's not very nice. As simple as that. It's not very nice to be in a situation where you have to take a side, where you feel like you can't take a side because actually that's a part of you and that's a part of you, right? So I guess the leverage here is being consciously aware of that and knowing how hateful and dark it can become if you choose to take a side. So you just remove yourself from the argument quite frequently, and then you realise, oh, I'm sitting in a position where I'm watching everyone go out and fight and not choosing a side because I refrain from disrespecting my heritage or my family on the left or my family on the right. It's not fair on either. So I'm just going to pull out and watch this stress test run out, and I guess that's been a narrative since I was like 4 years old, and that's just kind of just grown in me to kind of just watch the war and not really interject myself unless I'm interjecting to stand up for or against and try and create or broker leverage between the hatred that's spewing out from both sides, you know? So I guess that shaped me to who I am today. And that's been a stressor in my life for a really long time, you know? And it's because it's the path less chosen. Because since Black Lives Matter protests and all that activism era, a lot more white people came on board and said, fuck it, we fight for the blacks. To the end of time, to the wheels fall off. Yeah? And even in that principle, which is really, really controversial and has been controversial for me over time, is going, hold on. If we start screaming, we're just going to stand up for black people and minority groups and push for them to be fast-tracked and put into powerful positions, not based off merit, but just because they're black and they need liberation and this is their restitution, then this is what they're owed, then firstly, you're going to piss off the other race, right? Which is the minority race. I mean, the majority race based on statistics, statistically speaking, yeah? So you are going to see more white people in certain environments when the population of white people that live in that area or in that state or nation is a lot higher than the black people or minority groups from that area, right? So that's the first thing that we have to look at as a researcher and go, okay, well, obviously there's going to be more white people here when 90% of people in this area are white. Like, let's start ding 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 ding. Let's start at connecting the dots here. Not only that, when it comes to black empowerment, black culture, and black growth and evolution, what I think our greatest asset should be is our ability to evolve through self-awareness, self-improvement, self-determination, and cultural awareness. There is so much that goes on in the black community. There is so much ways we are ingrained as black people, different to how white people are raised. But not only that, how we are encouraged or how we naturally do or don't conform to the classical conditions that are seen as convergent in today's society. The rate of convergence is skewed towards the white person because they have been the majority. So when black culture comes in from different areas around the world that were once again deemed less than westernized metrics or rubrics, right? Then you're going to start seeing a lot of black people incapable of fitting in to a convergence logic, a convergence frame that is unaligned to their true divergent heritage. And their true divergent heritage wouldn't be divergent if they were truly enabled and allowed or given the framework, the toolkits to evolve in line with their lineage, but that hasn't been a possibility. Because once again, the stress test of the start of time and the true ingrained psychological stressors for the black person was what? The cotton field. Yeah? You pick cotton and you go back to the barn. You pick cotton and you go back to the barn and you are owned. Yeah? If we want to dive in and we want to go there, let's keep it real. Because once again, what's that? Evolution. So as we evolve and we evolve and we evolve and we evolve and we get liberation and we get freedom, we then get a chance to start breaking away from that stress of confinement to liberatory ways to exist. But hold on, wait. For one person's liberation and one new bill, one new act, one change to legislation does not change the world. It does not change your psyche. It does not reduce the stress. You think that all of these slaves on the cotton field suddenly stopped having trauma and pain? No. You think that they didn't wake up randomly or go into new environments where they were met with post-traumatic stress because they've seen somebody who looks like the person that used to lash them, or they've woken up in the middle of the nights with memories of being whipped or lashed. They don't want to speak too loud in the meeting in the office or at their new job because they never used to be able to even speak to another race. That doesn't make total and utter sense to absolutely everyone that's listening to this, because I'm actually diving into two periods of space and time. I'm actually imposing the ideology that someone who's 24 years old right now, black as fuck, right? Just a black person is what I mean. Sorry, I'm in the zone. This is what happens when I get in the zone. Just suck it up and deal with it, right? This black guy over here is 24. He feels really, really uncomfortable in his new job, which is corporate. Yeah? He's dark-skinned, he's overwhelmed, he's the darkest person on the team. That doesn't seem to bother the team, or no one's in the team said anything, but he feels uncomfortable. He's not around a lot of white people every day. He comes from a black community or black culture where we all speak and we're all more laid back and chill. We listen to nigger music all day and we say nigger, 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 nigger because we can, because culturally that's how we roll, right? Now, that example and that context of conversation and that code switching that needs to take place in the working environment to be accepted and received by the predominantly white team is a very difficult cognitive process that this black boy has to go through on a frequent basis to do his job. It makes his divergence and his true way of speaking and communicating something that he will eventually have to eradicate because he needs to conform to the status quo of employment within that sector that he wants to work in. He wants to be a tech developer, for example. Yeah? So he has to learn to be around other cultures, yeah? Other races communicate in different ways. Maybe not say the N-word so frequently just in case it comes up awkwardly in conversation in the working environment. But his family and his friends and the community that he knows best and the estate that he still lives on, because his salary's still not great, he's still inclined to speak that way. You know? So that's just an example there. And sometimes when he's in the main boardroom meeting and he's still the only black person in that boardroom, he has a bit of PTSD. He has pre-traumatic stress. After the meeting, when he said something and he was the only one to speak up and pitch an idea, he had post-traumatic stress. Well, he was triggered after the fact. Did I do the right thing? Didn't I do the right thing? Should I speak out of turn? Did they notice my skin colour? Did they judge me for it? Am I just a token black in the room? Yeah? It's about understanding the psyche of the individual. That's just one example, right? We can go to the left and we can hone in on the white person who's intimidated by the black person in the room. I don't really have any black friends. I don't really know anyone black. This is the first black person I've ever known, and now we're working on a project together full time. I don't know if I'm going to say the right thing or not. I don't know if they're comfortable with me. I don't know how to kind of go about it. We're in 2025 and these are still kind of conversations or instances that people have internally. Yeah? It's not an issue for everyone, but believe it or not, it is an issue. And these differences are beautiful things. For people that are willing and open to receive difference, many people are not. Many people are not. And that's what we have to learn and see the truth for. You know? Because there's stress in the community from both sides. So we're going to wind it in and close it down and leave it here. And this isn't where I intended to go with this. And there's so much we haven't even begun to scratch the surface of. Because there's more to discuss about the black community and code switching. And how they feel like they have to fit in. As a black Jamaican, who's grown up with a very specific culture. But I was born in the UK. And obviously I'm mixed. My dad was actually mixed race, so I have white family, and there's a lot of layering to difference and how we speak about race and how we see other races and how people will speak about race for or against. And that also includes white people who will speak negatively of white people because they feel like they must advocate for the black struggle. And there's a lot of black people who don't understand the depths and severity of the black struggle that has been ingrained on their psyche, that is up to us to break through ancestral liberation and remove those ancestral curses. Because the fact that I just had the ability to use an example of not speaking to the masters on the cotton field or even making contact with the masters on the cotton field could transcend through lineage and become a representation of someone who's 24 today. This is where we're going to pin it, and we're going to talk about systematic oppression and white privilege quickly and link it into stress, right? But this 24-year-old, Gen Z, whatever they're called nowadays, this 24-year-old doesn't have no idea about his parents and his grandparents and his great-grandparents and his great-grandparents and his great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandparents. But he came from them. And what they went through, he didn't go through, but genetically, that sperm and that egg that originated from them, that lineage, that does go back to the slave trade. Yeah, it does. Everyone loves to cry about that on the right side of the spectrum. That was years ago. That's over and done. Call Darwin on the blower and ask him if that's over and fucking done, because it's not. Evolution is real. And we're all descendants. Yeah? So the truth of the matter is, when we look at the lineage, we're always going back. So guess what we're inheriting? Stress. Every single one of us inherits stressors. Yeah? We inherit negative and positive. Biologically is one thing. Psychologically, spiritually, energetically is a whole other conversation. So we'll work on bridging the deeper roots of all of this further down the line as we evolve here. But let's put that out as the most obvious construct of all at this time. Yeah? Our lineage, our ancestry, it feeds us and it carries us. So the way in which the black man or the black woman stands today, although removed directly from slavery, inherited ideologies of how we communicate, perceive, body language, gesture, not necessarily even like or dislike, disdain, comfortability. In certain instances on the far left and the far right, there's outright hatred. And we do not speak to that race. We do not like that colour. We do not stand this or that, right? Fair enough. That's the extremities. But in other cases, it's not even conditioned publicly or classically on the front line. It's a subconscious towing of the line. The greatest example I was ever given in a lecture regarding the conversation was something that I've now registered in my mind as the black people were made to feel back all of those years ago that they were less than the white person and they were not to engage, look at, speak to. They were meant to stay in poorer accommodations, live a harsher life, work longer hours, receive less, and be owned by the white man or woman. Yes? On the polarity of that, the white person was taught, you do not look at the black with any sympathy. You do not acknowledge that the black is less than you, or have empathy for the black person baking in the sun, picking cotton all day, while you sit on the veranda sipping lemonade. This is your life. You are privileged. You are well off. You are abundant. Sit there under the canopy and live your best life. You ignore them. They are nothing but your servant. That is the harsh reality and truth of the situation from many, 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 many moons ago. Yes, we are here in the now moment, and we are not those people anymore. Reincarnation is something that many of you may want to look into here. But the lineage produces stuff. Yeah? Energy, memory, mannerism, gesture, belief. We are all stemming from our ancestry. That's one thing we can guarantee. We would not be here without the lineage that continued to allow us to become, That seed came from that person. And that person was tethered to some stressors, yeah? Our body and our blood vessels, our cells, every molecular, every piece of us has a percentile of stress that was inherited from the evolution of our seed, dating back to the very start of our lineage, which we cannot even comprehend. For what came first, the chicken or the egg, is still a conversation. So this isn't where I wanted to go, but this is where we ended up, because this is what is most pressing at this time. And it's 2025, and we're still having heavy conversations about race. Which is a shame. Because it's final thoughts from me just winding down for a minute, because it does make me personally sad. Because I don't want my career to be this. I don't want my career to be a black and white script or narrative or something that I have to discuss or navigate through or shed light on or promote. It's boring to me. There's so much more to our existence and evolution, and there's so much more I would like to be able to talk about, especially in regards to what will be coming out of the sky in the future, Yet we can't even move past black and white. What kind of shit is that? And I've got to sit here and feel guilty for every other word that comes out of my mouth, for God forbid I make an implication that disrespects black people or disrespects white people in any way. Sucks. Shit. Stupid. It's unfathomable that no matter how far we get down the timeline, racism's just still right there, sitting pretty. And more people are happy to scream it from the rooftops and claim why black people are right and why white people are the best and why things should be this way or that way. It's just a never-ending fucking tale. And why I don't like propaganda and showy LGBTQ bullshit, like when it's all extra pumped up propaganda. But I do love the genuine, same with Black Lives Matter. I hate stupid, dumb, immature campaigns that are just there for money and glorification, and they don't show any form of education. If I'm going to be an obnoxious twat and a stuck-up beep, it's going to be about the lack of authenticity and the genuine root of the situation, and something that lacks education and information. Yeah, I hate people just screaming Black Lives Matter for the sake of it, but you're going to go and break and burn and blow up all these places and do all this kind of protesty, rioting shit, or whatever you feel like you need to do for the movement. But in what way are you educating yourself and your family and your kids? And what way are you creating a long-term plan to improve the lack of progression in the black community? Show me what you're doing, because you're chatting shit, but you're not doing enough. Same with LGBTQ, or you want to twerk and scream scissors and neck on in public and wave your flag around. What else are you doing? Because trans people are dying on a frequent basis, killing themselves or being murdered. Honour killings are a real thing as well. It's serious things going in the world. So I am being obnoxious when it comes to shit like that, because it's exhausting. I'm not asking everyone to be activists. The activist element's quite annoying as well more time, because it's a facade, and it's like, just stop oil. How annoying are they as a collective? Like, all that, I hate it. Because all you've got to do is shut your mouth and sit down and do something productive about it. And often that comes in the form of written or powering forward in a way where you're communicating with someone else, you're writing something substantially significant, you're pushing for change through acts and bills, legislation, you're educating yourself, you're making real grounded change in society. That doesn't come from amped up clouty bullshit. It doesn't. And although the parties are fun and turning up is great, and I love a good Vogue and I love a ballroom event, but the truth of the matter is, education is power and knowledge is power, and change behaviour is the way. Change behaviour is the key. So all of this is amazing, but it's about changing the narrative. And I spoke quite a bit about white people that push for the black agenda and be racist toward white people as a way to somewhat liberate themselves, and denounce white people as a way to not feel privileged as a white person. I feel that needs to be looked at as well, because I feel like that's a real horcrux of self-sabotage and self-hate for a white person who truly hasn't come to grasps with the extent of what it means to really, really be black and go through the black journey. And I really want black people to understand the uniqueness and liberation that comes from black transcendence. I've never said that before, but I guess that's an important word that I would like to hone in on a little bit more. And I think the black journey is powerful and beautiful and rich and prosperous and eye-opening when you allow it to be just that. And it's not about screaming I'm black from the rooftops or doing anything specifically with a black agenda, but it is saying, this is who I am. I don't need to use any labels or identifiers, but this is who I am, and I understand my heritage and where I come from, and I'm going on this journey or walking in this direction, for this is my life. This is my life purpose. This is me. This is my understanding of my culture. Yeah? Do enough black people know about the black history of their own lineage? Do enough black people love and respect black people? We're deep today, because now I want to dive into black conversations and how in certain black communities authentic blackness isn't even appreciated. That's why so many black girls have lace wigs. How many black people do you know that have nappy roots with pride and have their natural hair out? Why is natural Afro hair not accepted or seen frequently in normal environments? In 2025, it's silly, because once again, we're having stupid conversations that were conversations back in what year? With who? So what, Nelson Mandela and Malcolm X and Martin Luther King done all of this for what? Because we're just running a causal loop of the same shit that continues to happen again and again. You know? It's because the education isn't there, and the motivation isn't there. And it's about changing the status quo through education and knowledge, not through campaigning and advocacy, and not through discrediting the significance of merit. Also something in my head that's been on my mind lately, so I will pin it and be absolutely honest about it. I always look at Elon's company X and the fact that he employs majority Asians. He is clearly on the far right of the conversation. He clearly makes his opinion known about what he wants and how he wants things done. He's the richest man in the world. And when it comes to mathematics and technology, Asian individuals with their ability to code and the way in which they've been taught in different places within and around Asia make them highly advanced in a lot of things that the rest of the world aren't. Okay? So he's leading the way with some of the greatest developers and technicians, majority from Asia. Now, if we go around going, okay, I'm only going to employ black people in this company, is that going to work for a leading tech company? If we're looking at qualifications, this is harsh, but this is also a really important conversation to be had. If you want the best tech company in the world, would you like to employ 90% black, 90% Asian, 90% white, or 90% Mexican, 90% Eastern European? We can break it down. We can go at ethnicity, culture. We can, do you know what I mean? Because you have to be willing to have these shitty conversations, and you have to go, right, if you want your company to be successful, you need people who have the highest qualifications. The reason that DEI has been stripped from America is because employing people based on race was creating a precedence for more racism to be breeded in-house, because certain people who actually had the qualifications for the job wouldn't get the job because the race would be the leading factor for employment. That's an awful way to go. Because people who are, and in business as well, financially, this person is way more qualified and way more advanced, but the truth of the matter is we are below our quota for Mexicans. So we're going to need to employ this Mexican or this black person. That's just an example. Do you see what I mean? Like, these are real things. So what we have to do, and this is my core belief system and why the conversation always ends up coming around here somewhere, is we must educate everybody in a way that is so empowering for them uniquely, so they can meet that criteria, so they can be the best they can be. Yeah? Because black education is very, very low and poor. I have had a really shitty upbringing where my education was on the floor until I was old enough to pave my own way and learn to educate myself, luckily through clairvoyance. And my guardian angels and archangels kind of pulled up and said, yeah, it's time for you to learn now. You're going to go to uni and you're going to get smart. I only started to go to uni when my clairvoyance was kicked in. So luckily I had privilege. I had psychic privilege, you know? And I went to uni and I started getting firsts immediately in my first year of my undergraduate degree. Prior to that, I had really poor qualifications. I had a level 4, which is like a kind of entry qualification, but nonetheless, I was getting shit grades all throughout life up until I was about mid-20s. Took a break from everything and then went uni full time, and now I'm getting firsts and my intelligence is flying, and now I'm doing higher level quantum mechanics and physics, and I've established my own school of science, you know? And that doesn't stem from anywhere, and that is the most devastating thing I've ever discovered in my life to date, is stress brought me here. Stress of not being smart enough, stress of not understanding, stress of not fitting in, stress of feeling divided between the black and the white, stress of not being quite what works for everyone else, just kept me going And as a result, I evolved. As the stress got me so much that I just went inside self, hermitology, the hermitologist, and I just stayed in me. Even though I was out and I was doing stuff and I'm around other people, I just built up such a strong internal resilience. I always come back to self. I always have a lot of inner dialogue. I talk to myself out loud. I couldn't care less. I'm very open to the internal processes of self, because I'm also aware of my clear senses and the fact that I do communicate with the other side. So once again, that psychic privilege is there for me to a certain degree, because I've had enough validity in the past for me to believe that there's more to my cognition than what most would perceive, you know? I'm not saying everyone else can't do it, they can, but not everyone's as much as tapped into it as I want to be, is the right way to say that. Because I want to be aware of whatever this is within me and how it works. I want to know how I see my granddad when he shows up, and when my nan shows up, and my family members or passed on loved ones that I know show up, or clients passed on loved ones show up. I want to know why. How do you come through? How do I see you? How does this work? What do you know? Where are you now? You know? And that's opened the doorway, and that's allowed me to go through immense levels of stress that I've had to combat independently on my own, but that has paved the way for me to find my own unique way of learning, understanding and evolving and mastering all of these different things I do now. Science is so important to me. And I loved it when I first started getting firsts in uni, in my undergraduate. But I was more in love with spirituality, and I was so torn between spirituality and science. And I was just begging and dreaming of them being able to just be one, because then I could be one. Yeah? Like, once again, it's that divide between the white and the black. Are you going to choose a side? If we're cussing white people, are you going to cuss white people with us? And if we're cussing black people, are you going to cuss black people with us? Because we would like you to choose a side. Everyone needs to choose a side. Are you for or against the white person? You know? Are you for or against spirituality or science? Are you for or against the left or the right? Choose. 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 Life can guarantee one thing. You have to always choose something, don't you? And that's where the stress stems. Because you feel like you're forced to make a choice that shouldn't even be a choice. Why am I choosing between that? I don't want to choose. I'm not going to choose. Is the off the beaten path choice. Because everyone else is quick to choose. Because everyone's weighing up the odds of, well, there's more money over there, there's more clout over there, there's more friendship over there, there's more fun over there. I'm not looking for that. I don't need any of that external gratification. I want internal resonance with my soul and my soul song and my life purpose. I want to feel at one. I want to feel peace. I want to feel grounded. And that definitely does not come from the stress of choosing left or right. That becomes from choosing to move outside of this network and just sit here and observe, right? I will be the umpire in this field then, because that's the safest place for me. Let me pull out and let you guys play this game of whatever the fuck it is, because I'm not really here for it. It's not really doing it for me. I don't need to induce stress by making a choice that is unaligned to my choosing. I wouldn't want to rock the boat for any of you guys, though. Keep choosing. Keep going for it. I'm not judging. I'm just saying I would prefer not to judge. Either or, as the supreme. As the ultimate and the epitome of one. Yeah? So, there we go. The power of stress through the craziest perspective yet. I'm sure we will be back soon with more.